What's up, everybody? Phil Mendoza with No Limits Archery, back again. Got Braden with me today. Bow Hunting Made Simple series continued. So most modern day compound bows have slightly shorter axle to axle lengths. So shooting with fingers is kind of a dying art maybe, but a thing of the past, right?
Right.
So when somebody's coming in to shoot a bow, one of the first things we do is we're going to measure them out for draw length. We're going to try to identify what's a good few bows for them to shoot. And then we're going to make sure that they know how to use a mechanical release. So one of the tools we use in the shop a lot, and you're going to see this in a lot of our videos, is a release trainer here. So Braden, if somebody comes in and we're going to be showing them what, kind of demonstrate for us when we're talking about instructing somebody on how to shoot a release, right? Because they don't know anything. Let's use their green, right? And so we're walking them through that process. Go ahead and start that.
So first things first, we usually work on the grip and then work our way back so that they're understanding that grip, which we'll have in another video. But we're wanting them to understand what the release does, depending on if it's a hinge style, which is not likely to be putting in a brand new shooter into a hinge style release, or for instance, more likely is going to be an index finger style. So first off, we have to teach them how to put it on. That's usually the first step because it's new to them. You'd be surprised at how many people are struggle with this part of it, of which direction it goes, as simple as that. So we want the index finger on the outside, because this is going to be our shooting finger, right? So we instruct them on that.
What about finger placement, Britt? So touch on that quickly.
Finger placement. So what I'm looking for they all say it's too short, and I say, let me see it on your hand. We like to see that index finger style release to be about like this on our hand, and we'll explain that later in the shot process sequence of it, but it helps us with our shot process later on. But I am instructing them when they first get a release on their hand that we're going to try and get our finger behind that trigger when we're drawing the bow or doing anything besides getting ready to fire that bow. So once I get them there, I show them that what we hook on. So I relate this to the D loop on our bow, and I usually point to those two things, giving them the education of, parts and pieces of the bow. Show them the hook on. I'll have them pull it back like they have a bow, but I'll have them pull it out away from their face. I don't start teaching them about anchor point or anything like that. I want them to see what it looks like here, and then have them wrap their finger around that trigger, squeeze, and release.
So put your finger back on there, Braden. Usually, this is subjective again. Okay, this is just good starting point. So when Braden actually wraps his finger around that trigger, he's getting it between that first and second knuckle somewhere. Some people like to favor higher on that knuckle. We typically don't like to have people shoot it on the tip of their finger. Okay, but in between those two knuckles is a good starting point. Where you go from there, again, it's a personal feel based off how you anchor and things that go along the process continuing. But watching the actual action of you squeezing through a shot is super critical, because the thing that people don't correlate is when you're shooting a bow and you have your hand against your face or wherever your anchor position is, you're watching your sight, you're watching your bow, you're watching downrange, and you can't see what's going on here. So there's that disconnect, right? So that's where, with Braden showing on how we're pulling it away from their face, it's super important to learn how to use that tool before we're expecting you to use it without being able to see it.
Trying to use a screwdriver with your eyes closed for the first time.
It's exactly right. So the progression from there is, Braden, I mean, you're having people shoot a handful of times with it there. Right. And then as we're continuing on, go ahead and continue that process. And
then as we continue on, then I'll have them load it again just like this, and I'll start to explain to them about anchor points. Not going to go too deep into anchor points right now, but then I'll go into the anchor point with them and wanting, a bone-to-bone connection type area underneath the ear, or have the release run along the jawline there, and then get them there, get them comfortable, then talk to them about the process of, okay, you're getting ready to fire, we're going to wrap that finger around, and we're going to squeeze with those and release.
And that's kind of the basics of how we usually like to start people. Now you got to understand, when somebody comes in to purchase a new bow, usually they're giving us 30 minutes to an hour-ish. If we can get an hour and a half to 2 hours, it's better. But not everybody has that time set aside to do that. So when you think about picking out a new bow, trying multiple bows, figuring out draw length, that kind of stuff, this step is very, very important in the process. So that's why we wanted to highlight that here. We're going to go ahead and continue on with some form and posture in the next video. But that's where we're going to kind of stop this one, because like I said, the visual aspect of learning how to use the tool right is just, it's so important.
Right, rather than holding even a 40-pound bow up for the first time and trying to do all that is super difficult. So that's why we start with this and get them started on that. So
yeah. So thanks for checking out this progression, this next video in our series, and we're going to continue on with the Bow Hunting Made Simple series. So stay tuned.